I really wish we could just throw away the book of Revelation from the Bible. Just toss it aside for a moment. Because then I think maybe for the first time we could have a chance as a people, all of us, to see the reality of what the prophets saw and what the Bible actually tells us about the last days. Put yourself in Jesus and his apostles' day. Did they have the book of Revelation? No. Did they know the prophecy of the last day? Yes. Did they miss them? Yes. But they certainly knew them. So look up the millennium, the little season, the 144,000, the beast, the Antichrist, signs, seals, witnesses, rapture. Just put those things in on the internet and do a search. And I did a quick video on that, but it's just amazing. And that is pretty much all that we talk about. That is all that we are interested in, that we don't even understand. And yet Revelation, the book of Revelation, to me is at best, the dessert at the meal. It's the dessert. It's the final thing. It's after you're already full, then you get this little dessert. And then you can maybe digest it because you start to understand or enjoy it. It's the bowl of pottage, the book of Revelation. I'm going to say it's like the bowl of pottage that Esau fell for. It is the least. It's the mote in the eye. It's the least. It is not the greatest. It is the least. I put it way behind the prophets of the Old Testament. But we don't read those things generally. So compared to the last days, things that are all through the prophets of the Old Testament. So let's give the book of Revelation 5% of value, and let's give the prophets 95% of value, instead of reversing it. So think about, what am I saying? The people in Jesus' day, put yourself in Nazareth. Did they know what the Messiah or the last days Elias or the person that was coming to save them from the Romans, did they know what was expected? Of course they did. Did they see it in him? They were hoping so. But when he appeared and he was with them and he started to read from the book of Isaiah, he stopped at the part literally mid-verse. I'll get into that in a minute, but he stopped and said, basically, I'm not that guy. So what do they want to do? They want to chuck him off a cliff. They were looking for the end days Elias, the restorer, the redeemer, the person that would bring it all together and save the tribes and bring back the way of the Father, the way of Abraham. They were looking for a different type of person. They were looking for the destroyer. You'll see it in the scriptures, the restorer, or the right arm of the Lord. That's who they were looking for. They knew what the last days expectations were. They knew them better than we do. Absolutely. I think they read the scriptures much better, especially the Old Testament and Torah, way better than we do. And yet they missed him. In Nazareth, Jesus stood up, opened up Isaiah, and read the first half of the prophecy. Then he closed the scroll, or wrapped it up, and said in mid-verse, mid-sentence, because he did not come to fulfill the role, the second part. Because when he closed that scroll, what did they do? They wanted to take him and throw him off a cliff because he started talking about Gentiles. Because, of course, Jesus or Ishu or whatever you want to call him, of course he knew what was coming. Of course he knew about the Gentile days. He knew about all those things. But they knew the prophecies. They knew the prophets. Absolutely. They knew the expectations and they were ready for it. They were eager for it. They knew the last days deliverer and what he would do. And they are under Roman troubles, as we know. And because Jesus did not match the role that they were waiting for, they rejected him. And now, as I get into this video, I want to help us to understand we are missing quite the exact same way, in my opinion. We are missing the prophets. And because we're missing the prophets, we're missing the Elias who is to come, the restorer, the redeemer, that physical redemption of the 12 tribes and of the world. We are missing it, waiting for Jesus to come down out of the sky and the rapture and all that kind of stuff. We're waiting for, at best, the dessert at the very end. We are going to miss the whole meal. We are going to be taken by advantage of and taken by surprise and deceived because we don't know the prophets as well as we should at all. And I don't blame myself or any of us, because why? Christianity that most of us know, they don't touch much on the prophets. They just say they're fulfilled and that's it. They're all done. Whereas Jesus said all the words of the prophets to the last jot and tittle, it'll all be fulfilled. Every word that they said, all of Isaiah, all of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all those prophets, they will be fulfilled completely before the end comes. And have they been? Absolutely not. We're going to go through some of those in a minute. But we, just like the people of Nazareth, we ignore the part we don't want to see. They didn't want to see the Messiah who came, just doing healings and miracles and redeeming the people and being the light and that kind of thing. But they were expecting something else. And now we in our day are waiting for this out of the sky thing, and we are not seeing the restorer, the redeemer, the right arm of the Lord, the man of righteousness who will come. We are missing out on the prophets. So maybe we don't reject Jesus or Yeshua or whatever name you want to call him, but we reject his words. Absolutely. Because we don't cherish the Old Testament and the prophets, who he did cherish and understood. The Father gave the prophets those words for us. A lot of them, especially with Isaiah and Jeremiah, a lot of their words are actually for us. Yes, coached in the language of their day, but the words are for us in our day. And for, of course, the mainly for the 12 tribes. But for the Gentiles, if they are willing to use them, they're there as well. The prophets were clear, as crystal clear as can be, about what's coming in our day. Yes, their words may be a little hard sometimes to understand, but when they come to pass, I guarantee we will understand them. So we should be looking at them now. Because as I said, Jesus said they will all be fulfilled. Not symbolically, not some, Christian way they're going to be, nothing like that. Fulfilled, in my opinion, to the letter, physically exactly the same way as the prophets gave them. So now in our day, like I said, we're looking for someone in the sky. And because of that, we will miss, just like the Nazarenes missed and the Pharisees missed, we will miss the one who is sent in the last days. And we will rebel and try to cast him off a cliff, probably, right? The Elias person that is going to come in the last days to restore the 12 tribes and bring them back. The prophets rejoice in his coming and in that day, in that deliverer, in that basically John the Baptist type figure. And what we can say the Savior is the end in the end. But all the work that happens up until the very final chapter is done by this servant who is the sent servant. I did a video on the sent one, as the Savior was the sent one and Abraham's servant was the sent one, and many prophets have been the sent ones. And this last day deliverer type person is also a sent one, a hidden arrow in the quiver, most people will never recognize him. And I don't believe, a lot of people right now are trying to speculate about that kind of thing. I don't believe in that. We'll know, those that are close to the Spirit and those that are following the things and looking for the signs in the Old Testament and starting to understand for themselves, they will recognize that person when they come. But I think almost everybody else, the 90 and 9, will be out there following the things that they've always followed in Christianity and other religions. So we have traded away the full meal, the full blessings, the blessings Jacob got, for the book of Revelation or the mess of pottage, which it is for us in our day. It is really worthless, in my opinion, right now. Nice to speculate about, I suppose, but it has nothing to do with our day right now. Before I really get into this, I'll make one comment. There's 144,000 that are to go out, and it names the tribes they're going to go out from. Well, have the tribes been brought back? Have the miracles of Jeremiah, have they happened yet? They have not. So we stand way back here thinking we are way up there. How many Christians are waiting for the rapture and all these kind of things to happen, and missing completely the hand of the Lord or the hand of the Father or Abba, whatever. I know people get offended at different titles. We need the meat and the milk, right? But in order to get the meat at the end, let's call the book of Revelation the meat at the very end, we need the milk to get us prepared. And that is the prophets, the Old Testament prophets. Number one, Isaiah. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, of course, Amos, Malachi, so many others. They almost all spoke of our day. They saw our day, especially Isaiah. We know he did. So did Jeremiah. They saw our day. They saw the dry bones. They saw what things were going to happen. And they spoke about them in the language that they had in their day. So we continue to be like Esau. I know a lot of people call me Esau because a lot of people have this false belief that Esau is all the Gentiles in the North, in Europe and America and everywhere else. And it's funny because to me, that's part of what we don't understand. We don't understand. We think we understand, but we don't understand. I've done so many videos on the Bible being an African book. The people were African. They lived south of Egypt, like Moses went south and Abraham went up and to the south. The Bible lands are fully in Africa, which means the Bible peoples are fully in Africa. They're not up in Europe. They're not in China, and they're not, unless they went at the time of the Tower of Babel, or they were dispersed out with the dispersion of the of Assyria of the lost tribes, or Babylon, or the Romans. But that was all to the covenant people. The rest of the Africans, in my opinion, are still in Africa, and Esau too, and Ammon and Moab and all those different peoples and the Canaanites. Everybody's still there. It's an African book. You know, they didn't bring in spaceships to take people away and transplant them and make them all of Europe is Esau. Because we have these blinders on, and we, of course, for the people who watch my channel, of course, terrible abuse by the Europeans, and still continues to this day, if not worse. But that doesn't make them change from being European to African or African to European. They are what they are. For bad or for good or for bad, they are what they are. But Esau, like all the other tribes, they're in Africa, unless the father took them away, and you can show how they did. But the problem, because we don't read, all of us, we read just little verses, or people say these one thing, because we don't tend to dig in, enough of us ourselves, into the depths of the prophets and reading and understanding the Old Testament, then we confine ourselves to just a few things, and we're led into great error. I just finished doing a video on how the Holy Land deception, because if we believe that's the Holy Land, we are deceived, and we will be deceived forever. We'll never be able to stop this and start to see reality, And I'm saying on the Old Testament, we need to see the reality. That's where the reality is. If we're looking at the book of Revelations and the signs and the tokens and all the things, we will see nothing. We won't even understand the book itself. Just look at the videos and the opinions. There's no understanding out there. Why? Because we've traded away the true inheritance of the prophets that Jesus loved and the apostles loved. And we've taken on the book of Revelation, which is super symbolic, and we've made it our one and only gospel for the last days. Like I said, Jesus said, all things written in the prophets must be fulfilled. All things. Now, just because we don't use the prophets or read them, or just because we don't understand what they were talking about, because we haven't spent the time to really think it through and understand and pray about it, then of course they mean probably nothing to us, and we won't know when they're fulfilled anyway, because we've never studied them and applied ourselves. But he said, all things written in the prophets must be fulfilled. Not they were fulfilled. No, they must be fulfilled. And why were the Pharisees and the Nazarenes blind? Because they hadn't applied themselves to read. Of course they knew. That's why Nicodemus, when he came, he couldn't figure it out. They had the prophecies of a certain type of Messiah coming. They also had the prophecies that they speak about in the New Testament, about the healing and the blind being able to see, and they had those prophecies as well. Now, yes, they removed them in the Masoretic text, or our Bibles don't have most of the quotes from the New Testament in the Old Testament, because they didn't want them there anymore. They wanted them removed. The Pharisees after Jesus, when they took care of their scriptures. So when we read our Bibles, it doesn't match up to the New Testament. where it says, and Jesus said did this, or they said that, or it was prophesied about this or about that. Well, those prophecies are gone from the Old Testament. Why? Because the Pharisees didn't want them, so they changed their Hebrew text, that we call it, into something else. And we all think, oh, that's the original Hebrew text, and it's not. It's a false document. So we can be just as blind today. Not blind because we have the book of Revelation, of course. We have Daniel. But we're blind because we don't read the prophets. We don't read Isaiah and understand his work. We don't understand Jeremiah. We don't understand Ezekiel. We don't understand and apply ourselves to understand these things. And here it really is, and it is the tragedy, because we can't enjoy or even understand the book of Revelation if we don't understand the prophets. In my opinion, it's impossible. And I believe that if you apply yourself to the Old Testament, and for those of you that do, you will know that the New Testament will be much clearer to understand, and especially the book of Revelation will be much clearer to understand, because Jesus did not come to bring new things. He did not. He came to restore the way of Abraham, the way of Adam, the way of Melchizedek. He came to restore what was lost at the time of the golden calf, before that. And by restoring that, we see that. I mean, I know people have a hard time with this, but when Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, he didn't say the commandment about adultery is done away. He said, no, it's not done away. It's now 10 times bigger. Don't even look on a woman. Or about getting angry. He said, don't just not do murder or kill someone, but it's murder. He said, don't just do that. Don't even get angry in your heart with your brother. And I see on my comment section, I love your comments, by the way, and thanks so much for all of you that contribute. But I do see where I have to correct a few people once in a while because I want my channel to be safe. And I see people calling others fool and dumb and all kinds of, well, again, Sermon on the Mount. Hellfire if you call people dumb, stupid, fool, and all those things. We don't even read the Gospels. We read Paul. And you know how if you watch my channel, you know how I feel about Paul. You know, ouch you go. But the Gospels, if we applied ourselves, if we could just tear out the 5 pages or 6 pages that is the Sermon on the Mount, we'd have all we need in our lives. If we could just do that, and the Beatitudes, that's all we need. It's all there. But we want different things. We want exciting things, new things, and not the boring, keep the commandments, get the comforter, learn to know the Father and the Son, and have a good life. No, we want to know about everything that's going to come. Yet the funny thing, or sad thing, I guess, is that it's right there in front of us. It's right in front of our eyes in the prophets. It's crystal clear. We're going to talk about mire in the streets and the remnant and those things in a minute. But like I said, even in Judah, yes, they understood what was coming. They just were understanding and missing the actual Messiah and were looking for the Messiah type figure or the man of the last days like Moses or the David or whatever you want to call it, the right arm of the Lord. They were looking for the different person. So they expected to get out of Roman domination and get all their money back and all that kind of thing. And yet that isn't the time. They were missing the person, and they missed. And now we're, as I said, missing out as well. So Nicodemus, quickly, he was a ruler of the Jews, as we know. We know the story. He, a great man of the Pharisees. Most of them weren't very nice, as you know. And a lot of them were into very occult type things. But Nicodemus, when he came with a heart. He wanted to understand. He taught the scriptures. He knew them probably better than almost anyone in Judah at the time. But Jesus said to him, you must be born again. And Nicodemus answered, well, how can these things be? He didn't understand. It's like the things that Jesus was saying was going right over his head. He knew the Torah. He knew the law. He knew the prophets. He knew the prophecies. And he's saying, how can these things be? Yet in the scriptures, in the very next chapter, Jesus is with the woman at the well, and it's not going right over her head. She captures it very, very quickly. She talks about prophets and the heart and that she's not allowed in by the Jews. The people of Judah will not allow her in to the temple and all those kind of things. And then she says, I see that you're a prophet. Well, we don't see Nicodemus say he is a prophet. Nicodemus trying to figure out what kind of prophet he is and who he is. But she says, I know. And then he says, I'm the Messiah. She goes, oh, okay. Well, he didn't say I was the Messiah to Nicodemus. He talked to Nicodemus in language that was going right over his head. She wasn't into the fine points. She wanted to know about the heart. She just asked, how can I worship God if I can't go to the temple? And Jesus said, you don't need that. You don't need the buildings. You don't need all that stuff. What's coming is in the heart, just like Abraham had in his heart when he was chosen. It's about the heart. Always has been. We like it to be about buildings and temples and scriptures and all that. But think about Abraham. Was he carrying around a bunch of scriptures with him? No, he wasn't. I'm sure he knew some things, of course. So Jesus said straight to them, Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. And then he added, you are of Abraham, you're of his seed, and yet you seek to kill me. You do not the works of Abraham, and before Abraham was, I am. And they, of course, tried to stone him. So were they the seed of Abraham? Yes. Were they the heart of Abraham? The opposite. Were they redeemed and brought back to be with the Father anytime? No. Cast off. That's why Jesus had wept, and in my opinion, out about Jerusalem. Yes, they were the seed. Yes, they were the chosen people. Were they chosen? Yes. Did they obey? No. Were they brought in? No. They were left out just as much as any Gentile was left out, and maybe worse, which is what Jesus said. He said that they will be ahead of you going in, the blind leading the blind. He was quite harsh about those people. Abraham walked and talked with the Lord. We know that. He discussed the Sodom with him and said, can I, even if I get 10, can you spare them? And you see the heart of Abraham. And do you ever see that with the Pharisees? Think about it. When Jesus does his miracles and blesses people on the Sabbath or whenever, do you see the Pharisees going, oh, that's so good. I'm so glad you did that for him. He really needed that. No, quite the opposite. They only were there to condemn. And if I listen around, and I'm talking about the people that are in the diaspora group, Gentiles, they have their own crazy stuff going on. But among the diaspora group and some of the channels that you probably have been around, exposed to, do they speak like the Savior, or do they speak like the Pharisees? I'll leave that with you to think about. So our problem now in our modern Pharisaical system that we live in, we parse what? The words of Revelation. There are thousands of videos about every little subject in the book of Revelation. Do we understand it? No. And do we miss it? Absolutely. We miss who? The prophets. We miss the meal. It's like being invited to the wedding feast and we don't come because we're so busy with Revelations out there trying to parse out all these things. We don't see the invitation and we're too busy. The invitation is the prophets. They're the invitation. They're the words of life. The book of Revelation, without them, is book of damnation, in my opinion. It means it'll bring you nothing. It'll not bring you closer to the Father. It'll not bring you any light or understanding. It'll only bring confusion. Just look on YouTube, on the channels, and you'll see just pure confusion. I'm going to start about maybe, in my opinion, the most important prophet of the Old Testament, and that is Isaiah. He's, 60, 80, a lot of chapters. Types and shadows. He spoke in a way that is hard to understand, yes, because he was speaking about things in his day that were a type of things to come. And I'm glad that he did, because if he'd written in plain language for us, do you think the powers that be would ever let his words even get to us? I don't think so. Not at all. I think the fact that they are coached in symbolism and hard to understand, then people couldn't understand it, so they just let it go because they didn't realize it was condemning them or having an effect. But as we go into our days, I believe we will start to understand, and the veil will start to lift off our eyes, and we'll go, oh my gosh, look at the feast of the prophets. He saw the rise of, I'll give you some examples. I did in my last video, but Babylon, okay, Assyria, Egypt, mountains, hills, Okay, crickets and worms, and he uses all kinds of symbology. Waters rising. Waters can be peoples. Mountains can be large countries. So in the mountain of the Lord, okay, in the we think, the greatest mountain, what mountains and all that kind of stuff. When he's talking about mountains, we can think about countries or realms. We can talk about hills. We can think about small nations. When he talks about the Assyrian, who he knew who the Assyrians were, but when he talks about the Assyrians coming in and wiping out Babylon and the people being mire in the street and all that kind of thing, he's talking about the future. Yes, he applies it to his time, but he's talking about the future, which is why when Jesus was in Nazareth and he's reading from Isaiah, he stopped mid-verse because Jesus knew the rest of it about the restoration and the guy in the last days, the man like Moses or the man like John the Baptist in the last days, the Elias, when he comes, he would fulfill the rest of Isaiah. Jesus came for the first part, and we don't see that. Isaiah, to me, is the greatest of all in the Old Testament. And the rest are great too, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, of course. But Isaiah, just if you read it and start to really consider it, I think you'll really get great benefit. Isaiah 10:5-6, it says, O Assyrian, the rod of mine anger, I will send him against an hypocritical nation to tread them down like the mire of the streets. Okay, so that is the left arm of the Lord. It was the Assyrian nation did that to what hypocritical nation? Well, the lost tribes, right? A hypocritical Jezebel and all her group that rejected the Father and rejected the way and went after Baal and all that kind of stuff. Yes, but it applies to our day. Can we think of a hypocritical nation? Yeah, it's pretty easy, and many others that go along with them. But the left arm of the Lord, the Assyrian, so a group of nations or a nation in the last days that will basically destroy Babylon, to tread them down like mire of the streets. This is the collapse of Babylon. So when you're reading about Babylon in the book of Revelations, okay, this is applying to the same thing as Daniel applies to a lot of the same. They all apply. They've seen the same thing, just are speaking from different vantage points, I suppose. But the Assyrian work comes before the deliverance, way before. It's the beatdown, right? Some people call it Jacob's troubles and all those kind. The beatdown that is coming, that we can't even comprehend. We can't even fathom it. I shudder, to be honest. I hope in my heart that I have the heart of Abraham, where you're pleading for the Father not to have the last days come. No, please, because I don't think we have a concept of how difficult and hard to take those days will be. We are so used to Egypt, the old Egypt, as the people were in those days. And I'm doing a video on that very issue, but we are so used to that are we going to want to leave our sports, our entertainment, leave it all and have that end for us, everything that we're used to? I don't think so. We would like to have this guy come down to the sky and say, great, well done, and it's all good. But we don't read what truly is going to happen. In Isaiah 41:10, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. This is a person, okay? The right arm, the left arm is the Assyrian, the right arm is a person, a man like Moses. Don't think of it's a woman, it's a man like Moses, who will come, this deliverer, the same one that in Isaiah that Jesus was talking about when he stopped reading when he was with the Nazarenes. In Isaiah 41:13, for I, the Lord God, will hold thy right hand, saying, fear not, I will help thee. So the Father will send a servant in the last days to restore and protect his people, just as he did with Moses. Moses is the type, just like Jeremiah. We're going to read that in a second, but when Jeremiah talked about the restoration of the tribes, the man like Moses will do works like and greater than Moses. So like I said, in Nazareth, when Jesus was reading in Isaiah 61, he closed the scroll, but what he didn't read was, "And the day of vengeance of our God to comfort all that mourn." Well, that's still in the future. That hasn't happened yet. So Jesus didn't read it because it wasn't what he was there to do. That's for another person, for another time. It's not even for our time. It's still ahead of us. Isaiah 3:24. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be a stink, instead of a girdle a rent, instead of a well-set hair baldness, instead of a stomacher a girding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. This is the collapse of the pride of the daughters of Zion, or the daughters of the kingdom. It's the humbling of the daughters of Zion. Well, for me, when I start reading about the well-set hair and the burning instead of beauty, you start to picture certain things that might happen in a coming day. Isaiah talks about there'll be so few people that a child will be able to count them. There'll be so few men left. In Isaiah 3:25, thy men shall fall by the sword, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man. Okay? We're going to lose a lot of people. The last days, what's coming is not going to be very nice. Sodom was a good a metaphor for what is coming. Isaiah 7:16-17. Isaiah again repeatedly shows that so few men remain after the judgment that a child could count them because of this population collapse. And then we read about people saying, well, where did all these people come from where we lost everybody, and where does this group come from? Well, that's the lost tribes, in my opinion, coming back. So marvelous things have to come still. Isaiah 1:9, except the Lord of hosts had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sodom. Absolutely. And he says to the righteous, and I say this to all my viewers, and I hope I'm in that same camp one day, he says, you're numbered in my hand, I know who you are, and I will protect you, even if it so be as by fire. Even if he has to keep us from being burned in the last days, he still will protect us. Isaiah 13, and Babylon, the glory of kingdoms. So remember that Babylon was after Isaiah, right? And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It won't be pretty, right? It's not going to be nice. Think back to the burning instead of beauty and that kind of thing. In Isaiah 14, I will rise up against them and sweep it with the besom of destruction. And who's he going to use for this besom of destruction? The Assyrian, the horde, the group that's going to come. Because this is the work of the left arm, the Assyrian, to sweep the vineyard, or to sweep the chaff after the getting the grain. Isaiah 52, awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, and shake thyself from the dust. That's, in my opinion, the dry bones. Come alive, come back to who you need to be, prepare yourselves. And then comes Isaiah, okay? He saw the last days. He said, the days will come when they will no longer say, as surely as the Lord lives who brought Israel out of Egypt, but as surely as the Lord lives who brought Israel out of the land of the north. Jeremiah saw a second Exodus, a greater, much greater, so great that people wouldn't even talk about Moses anymore. Greater than just going through the Yam Suf or the Nile River or wherever you consider it to be. We're talking a worldwide event, greater than Sinai, greater than the whole of it. And then this is Jeremiah speaking. But what do we read and ponder those things? No, we ignore it while we watch Revelation. And Ezekiel, the prophet that we've spoken about the dry bones. He saw a nation resurrected, not a physical in that sense, but a nation with spirit brought back to life that had been dry, had lost everything, their heritage, their name, their land, their people, their tribes. They'd lost it all through the difficulties. But Ezekiel speaks of this restoration, the bringing of life back into a people that had lost its connection, its life, the life of the olive tree, I'll say, or the life to the vine. They had been disconnected, separated, the wild and natural branches issue. The wild branches, yes, they had their part, but the time when the natural branches are returned, that's what all the prophets talk about. The natural branches coming back to the roots. And the roots, in my opinion, are in Shem and in Africa. They hold the roots, and the text is held by the Ethiopians, and I've gone into that in other videos. And Ezekiel, he said, he saw the mountains of Israel restored. He saw the watchmen. He saw the cleansing. He saw the rebuilding. He saw the glory returned. And do we rejoice in it? Yes, some of the diaspora rejoice in it and are reading it, which is great. But the Gentiles, they're not going to care about it. But most of us just don't, we ignore it. Because again, we're looking at the book of Revelation. That's all we want to know about. We don't want to know about the right arm of the Lord. Because who is he coming to restore? Yes, there'll be some Gentiles, the ones that are willing to support the 12 tribes and be strangers in the midst. But that isn't who is coming to restore. The restoration means something was taken. So to restore means a group of people that will be restored. And it's not the Gentiles being restored. It is the lost tribes. The 12, if you say 13 tribes, because Joseph got 2 tribes, right? But this restoration is key, and it's about the literal restoration of the 12 tribes, of which really Judah and maybe one other is even around that we know of. Yeah, lots of people speculate about the lost tribes, but the lost tribes were lost even back in Jesus' day. He said, I have many sheep to go and visit that are not of this fold. And he also said he wasn't going to the Gentiles, so where was he going? I'll just leave that with you. But we don't know. There's lots we don't know. That's why when they say in the last days, that's why it says in Isaiah, they'll say, where did all these come from? We lost all our children, and where did these ones come from? Well, because they'll be brought from who knows where. I don't know. We can all speculate, but we don't know. So the key that, because the churches, generally almost all Christian churches, want to think that they are Israel and that the true 12 tribes were just, they're gone forever. Well, because of that, they don't care about the prophets. They don't care about the restoration. They don't care about anything to do with that. They only care about Jesus coming in the sky. And that is a huge blindness, huge blindness. And it won't even happen that way. And most won't even be here when it even happens. And they're not being taken away in a rapture. No, we all are going to go through the difficult times. But the ones that love the Father, he will protect in his hand. He says that he will. I know we forget this. I'll bring it up again. We forget that Jesus and his apostles did not have the book of Revelations. Now we can say that Jesus knew about it. Of course, I mean, lots of things he knew about, I'm sure. But the apostles, they only had the prophets in the Old Testament and the Torah. That's what they had. Yeah, they might have had the book of Enoch and some other books we don't have now. But what they had, we basically know what they had. Yet they could understand what was coming, to a degree, but they still, even the apostles, did not understand Jesus when he spoke clearly to them, because they were still, all of them, Judas included, they were expecting something different. And they were angry when they didn't get what they wanted. Not so much the apostles, but think about even Peter when he denied the Lord. He didn't understand. And he repented, of course, and he came back and was the greatest. But they did not understand. I think the women, in my opinion, understood much better than the men did. I know they did. Who was at the tomb? Who believed? Who was at the cross other than John? So we have a hard time because our mindset is this is what all we believe we know. Our ego stands in the way, and to learn as a little child is a very hard thing to do. I'll give an example as a Gentile. For me, doing these videos, when I started out, one of my first videos I did was about Jesus being from Africa. But did I understand it fully? I didn't. I didn't understand the whole Exodus as well as I do now. But yeah, you start to see a little, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and then, yeah, you can start to see a much more. But as a Gentile, I love the people. I can accept that. I have no problem. I rejoice. The best people I know, not all, but a lot of the best people I know in my life are African American or Africans. So do I have a problem seeing it? I have no problem seeing it. And then when I look at Deuteronomy 28, it's pretty obvious who the people are. But we have our blinders. We do. And even in your own community, I'm going to say you do. When people come on programs, you need to know and study yourself so you can challenge them. When they say the pygmies are the Canaanites, you need to go, no, please, that's, no. How is that possible? When they came down in the Exodus and came down into the land, they feared the Canaanites because they were giants, huge, large, not pygmies. But when people say these things, or that every person in Africa is of Israel, well, that isn't factual. I mean, yes, Israel is scattered among all of Africa. I believe that. But does that mean every tribe in Africa, every group is Israel? I mean, we have to still use our heads and think things through rather than going, yeah, it's so easy to just say things. And even in your own community, like I said, for instance, I had to look at the Yah and Yahuwah and Yeshua and Yahweh and all that kind of stuff. And I did a video. I've done a few videos on that. And now I'm glad that I got through that and I understood where those words came from in the last 100 years. And I understood the text that they came from. And now I understand the Septuagint and the Masoretic text in our Bibles and the problems and the difficulties. And they didn't just replace you with a people, they replaced your text. They replaced everything. I mean, it's a sham. The whole thing is. And once you start to understand, maybe it's easier for me because I come from the outside. But once I can see that the land is probably in South Ethiopia, Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, maybe even to South Africa, once I can start to see that, then it's easy for me to, at least for me, to accept that, yeah. And then I can see some of the people of Judah probably ended up over in West Africa. That makes complete sense. They ended up in Spain. They ended up everywhere. But if we keep blinders on and let people within our own community, your own community, say things that are untrue and teach you words for the name of the Father and the words for the Son that are untrue, nobody has the name of the Savior, though his mother called him in the Aramaic. And of course, Jesus was not, he didn't go by that, but that is the Greek word that is used from the Joshua, from that word 250 years before Christ. The translation from Hebrew or Aramaic into Greek was Jesus or Jesus or whatever. So yes, it's changed over time. One of my viewers used Ishu. I like that. He said that's from the Aramaic probably. And I thought, that's great. But the other names, no, I'd rather have my African name. Sorry, I believe the heart of the people is in Africa, not through a book that came through the Europeans and we think, oh, that's the real Hebrew. And no, it's not at all. It's not. It's 1,000 years old. Ask them if you believe it's the Hebrew, then ask them, show me the text of the Hebrew from 500 after Christ, or 200 after Christ, or even at the time of Christ. Show me the Hebrew or the Aramaic text from that time. Well, they're all gone. Now, did they destroy them or were they all lost? It doesn't matter. We don't have them. But if you are honest and open, you can look at the Greek text, the Septuagint, and you can compare it to the Ethiopian text as well, which is Septuagint as well. You can compare it to what we call the Hebrew text, and you will see it's all changed. Tons of changes. When people say, oh, you shouldn't touch the scriptures, well, who touched the scriptures more than the Pharisees did? Because they didn't want Jesus to show up in the Old Testament, so they just removed it. So in your Bibles, you're missing the prophecies that were changed about the Gentiles and about Jesus. And it's sad. But we have to have an open mind. I, as a Gentile, can do it. So you can do it. You can challenge the people in your community when they say things that are demonstrably false, like the Canaanites were pygmies. Please, we have to study. We have to study the Old Testament ourselves. We have to study it for the understanding. We don't have to go to the original Hebrew. If you want to learn a language, in my opinion, go learn Geats of the Ethiopians. Go learn. There's a channel. I'll put a link here. He talks about this, and he's from your community. Go learn the Geats. It's much closer than the Hebrew that you think is Hebrew that isn't. That they've put in all kinds of terrible things into that scripture that we use in our Old Testament. That is the basis of what we call the Old Testament today. It isn't the true Old Testament. It's the manipulated Old Testament. The true Old Testament is found in the Ethiopian Bible and in the Septuagint. And even that we don't have the true because we don't have the original text that the Greek was translated from. But do remember who translated that 72 Hebrew scholars from each of the different tribes. I think it was 6 from each tribe. So they translated it into the Greek. So the Septuagint, yes, it's in Greek, but who did the translation? It wasn't the Greeks. It was the Hebrews into Greek. Is it perfect? Of course not. When I speak Spanish, I live in Mexico. Yes, I can speak Spanish very well. Not as well as a Mexican can, but I speak very well for a foreigner, But does that mean I can translate easily and perfectly into their language? And even if I was super fluent, born in the land, and you gave me an English text and I had to put it in Spanish, it doesn't translate. The jokes don't translate. The innuendo, the concepts, they don't translate very well. So the Greek text isn't perfect, but it's much better, 10 times better than the Hebrew text that came through the Europeans that joined into that religion. That text, you're better off to go to the Greek one. Love the text like the book of Revelation. Love Daniel. Love of those things. Sure, there's great things to think about there. Esdras and all the other things. But Isaiah is the key. Jeremiah is the second key. Ezekiel the third. If you can get those three, and then the smaller prophets, Malachi and other Amos and the other prophets, and Esdras and some of those things. Yes, read those. But that is way, that's like the meal. That's like the feast that we should not give up, like Esau did for a mess of pottage. It didn't help him, and it won't help us. I also want to warn you quickly about many extra canonical texts are from the Gnostics. Okay, the book of Thomas, the book of Mary Magdalene, there's all kinds of them. There's tons of them actually. And they were written way after Jesus' time by the people, especially the Greeks, who were into the other religion, the religion of the garden, the serpent guy. So things like Thomas says, when you make the two one, then you will enter the kingdom. Okay, it's talking about stuff that I want to get into in this channel right now. Or Mary Magdalene says, then Mary rose up and began to speak, and then he kissed Jesus and all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff, you got to be careful. I see people quoting from the book of Jasher. Well, that book is only 200 or 300 years old. It's not the original book of Jasher that was mentioned in the scriptures. It's a new one, just has the name on it. Many things just have the name on it. So we have to be very careful, because just because a thing says, Testament of Thomas or the Testament of whoever, doesn't mean that they actually wrote it. Someone just but if I put their name on it, right? It's like, I'll put the name Lake Victoria on that lake because I like Victoria the Queen and I want to make it British, so I'll just change the name of that lake. Well, that doesn't make it Lake Victoria. It still had an African name. But the issue is we have to be careful what we read. And if you want to go to an extra canonical text and have some feeling that it's good, then use the Ethiopian Bible. It at least tracks back to very much close to the time of Jesus. It has the Book of Jubilees, Esdras, Maccabees. It has some lost books in there. But you'll notice the Book of Jasher is not in there. The Book of Thomas and Mary Magdalene and all those things, they're not in there because those are Gnostic texts. Esau traded what he had for a mess of pottage. Christians and Christianity have traded what they got for a mess of pottage. And they can't understand it's a mess out there. 55,000 different churches. And even among the awakening people, yes, as I said, you come away from Christianity and you see that it's an oppressing type thing, but then you start joining other groups. In my opinion, don't join any group of any sort. I don't have a group I don't want, and I'll never have a group. I don't want groups. The Father doesn't want groups. He said, come unto me, one by one. When Moses invited them on the mountain, only 70 or so went up in the end. When Abraham was with the Lord, as they called it, or Kyrios, or with whoever, he spoke to him one by one. Moses spoke face to face with God, or with the I am, or whatever you like to call him. Moses spoke face to face, and we can speak one day face to face. That's what Jeremiah says. In that day, all will know the Father. All will know the way. They'll with themselves. They won't need to be taught anymore. But we're not at that point now, so we just have to be so very careful. Don't risk following groups. Don't risk following just one text out of so many. Don't risk following anybody, even me or anyone else. Learn from everyone. I listen to even Gnostics. I listen to people that teach crazy stuff and good stuff. Lots of fantastic stuff too. Carameo, Turlback. There's lots of great channels out there among your people. And like I said, I'm going to put a couple here. But trust no one. Trust the Father, the first commandment. Have no other judges, no other people, no other men, nobody between you and the Father. Trust no one. Don't join groups. Don't get into the group thing. We all want that, but where do groups always go? Back to the fold. Thieves and robbers. If we will keep the commandments and return to the prophets and read and study, we will get the Comforter, and the Comforter will guide us to the Son and to the Father. That's all we need. Then we can be one with each other, not one in a group, but one knowing one another because we follow the same and are connected to the same Father and the same Son. I'll put a link here to a video I think you'll enjoy, and to the one that I over here, and to one that I just finished. Thanks for watching today. Please leave all your comments. Love your comments. I use them as much as I can. And please leave a like if you did enjoy the video. And thanks for all you do. And thanks for watching my videos. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.